We're live. What's up? What's up? Yeah. So week 4. Going into week 4. Oh, the screen says week 2 at the top, but we're gonna ignore that. It is week coming up on week 4. You know, we just saw week 3. Pretty good matches. Pretty chaotic. I mean,
Yeah,
I think our predictions didn't go the way, right?
I thought they did. I thought we
Well,
did pretty good.
I don't
Not
think
not
we.
cap point wise.
Yeah.
Like I think we guessed the wins pretty good.
Yeah. For sure. You wanna just make sure that we're live for me?
We are live actually.
Oh,
I
sweet,
can
sweet.
confirm that, and we already have 9 people in here. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Oh, sweet, sweet. Yeah. So week 3, week 3. What a week. So you didn't cast this week. How do you
I
feel
didn't
about that?
cast. It was a good break. I needed the break. It
Yeah.
allowed me to play, and at the same time, I did watch. I believe I watched every stream. I made sure that I watched every stream, which is a lot harder than you think it is. Watching 6 different matches, but because there's so many 5-0s, made it a little bit easier to watch. A little bit easier to watch because they're a little bit shorter when they're 5-0s like that. So saved you a little bit of time.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on the opposite end of the stick. I've seen a lot of the match scores. I've seen a lot of the stats. I haven't even seen a lot of the videos. I streamed I think 3 matches this weekend.
Mhm.
So, man, it was brutal. I mean, I love casting, and it does take a lot of energy, but also missing watching those casts and watching those streams is always takes a little bit away from me, because at the end of the day, like, I I think this moment every single week where we get to do our predictions and our recap is one of the best parts about APL so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, being able to interact with fans or watchers or like players and viewers, all of that stuff is so much more fun than being on a 30 or 15-minute delay, where you're really just relying on the game and the action. But with this, you can get into the nitty-gritty a little bit more.
Hmm. I agree. I agree 100%. And I think that we've gotten some really good feedback from having done this a couple times. People really liked the players of the week, tank crew of the week, that kind of thing. I think we're going to continue doing that. And I think that it's given us a chance to kind of like it kind of changes how you watch matches, right? You kind of try to be a lot more objective about it, and uh, but you also appreciate it too because you get to watch teams as they go throughout the season. You get to see like, do they stay consistent? Do they grow? Do they fall? Do they crack under the pressure? And I think that we kind of saw that. By the way, KO just put prediction: ESPT will not lose this weekend in APL because it is a bye week. I think that's a solid prediction right there. And we'll have to see. We'll have to see when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
Does ESPT lose? Do they win? Do they tie? Not sure.
Yeah. So what of the matches that you watched were your favorite matches? What are the, top 1, top 2, top 3? I mean, whatever you want to do, I'm curious.
Okay, so I think ESPT versus Broken Arrow is number one. And I think that going into it, I think I said ESPT was going to win 3-2, but I put Broken Arrow on upset alert, and I feel like my prediction is like, despite it not being actually, it was actually correct point wise, although it really shouldn't have been. But if we go into that, ES Broken Arrow. I remember when we were talking about this, right? It was this whole different scenario because they picked Hill 400 and Broken Arrow. I think has always been a little bit criticized because uh, they the tank play hasn't been the best, but their infantry play is so good. And
Right.
so this kind of mitigated, right? And we talked about, and that's why I put them on upset alert. I was like, maybe it bounces out a little bit. And what did we see from Broken Arrow? They took the point and held the point for a decent amount of time at the beginning of the match. Like it almost looked like Broken Arrow was gonna do it. In fact, if anything, they started to cap ESPT's second point before 30 minutes was up. Like it was looking really good for Broken Arrow. And then ESPT doing what they do, they continue to do great map control, put pressure on, and with that hill 400 being the center point, man, they were able to infiltrate on multiple fronts, and eventually they took it and pushed Broken Arrow back. Broken Arrow, continuing to show their fighting spirit, just like they did in the GBI match. They go and they cap second point within the last 2 minutes or so, to make it a 3-2 match. But ESPT going to continue their undefeated streak in Division One and go 3-0, 3-0, or is it? Yeah, three
Yeah,
and
yeah,
zero,
I believe so.
3-0, because they're going to the bye in week 4. So they beat Syndicate, they have beat Glow TL, and they have beaten Broken Arrow. The last opponent will be in week 5 against GBI. So yeah, what about you? Did you have a favorite match
Uh, well, it was
other than the multiple that you casted? I mean, like you casted a lot this weekend, dude.
yeah. So I mean, within APL, I casted Lucky Strikes Marauders versus 10th Mountain, and that was that was up there. And I feel biased
Yeah,
because I think I'm always talking about the matches that I casted, but and maybe that's it. But also, I think when we were talking last week, that was kind of the one match that was going to be very close, and
yeah.
it surprised me. I did not expect a 5-0, but also at no point did it ever feel like a 5-0.
No.
You saw Lucky Strikes Marauders pull it off, but at the end of the day, 10th Mountain really able to get in there and make it competitive. You saw a lot of capture point flips. It was drowned, I believe. What is it? Drowned Fields, I want to say.
Yeah, that second point on the Axis side, because the map was a beach map, right? It was
Utah, yeah. So
Utah.
Drowned
There we go.
Fields and Chapel was the midpoint, and man, Chapel went back and forth, and 10th Mountain's defense onto Drowned Fields was really quite something, and it took Marauders a long time to figure it out and kind of figure out, one, where they're coming from, and two, how they handle it. I think I think at the end of the day, it's just really it really goes to show how these teams are improving, and it's kind of been, I have a favorite match, but also every single match throughout the weeks has been like a new favorite if I had to compare from week to week. And maybe that's just because, we do this every week. So I've been watching every single team in every division, and
Right.
I've been keeping track more and more. But I felt more connected with each one of these teams than I've ever felt before. And it's
Oh
been
yeah.
it's been a crazy experience. I'm sure you feel the same way.
I 100% do, and I think back to like some of my predictions at the beginning of APL, and I realized it's like, man, like there's certain things that I just did not understand, and like in certain teams where I 100% underestimated. I think Vanguardia is like the key one that I underestimated, and like you look at Vanguardia, and Vanguardia is now 3-0. They are now 3-0 in Division Two over 75th. 75th, I was like, man, it's their division to lose. And now after they beat 75th 3-2 in a very competitive match, but I would still say uh, pretty dominant for Vanguardia. I don't think that. I mean, other than like a little bit of a late push at the end of that match, it was still very. It didn't feel like Vanguardia was in danger. And then now they go and they 503 AC in pretty dominant fashion. In fact, if anything, I'll pull it up real quick. But I believe that time, yeah, 48 minutes. So they 5-0'd 3AC in 48 minutes. And I think the story with that is you just continue to see just extremely competent infantry play with I would say semi aggressive tank play that's paying off for them. They're playing a little bit unconventionally, using a lot more AT guns, and I think that it's just paying off for Vanguard. That they're playing their own style, and I really like that. And I'm so excited to talk about the preview too, because we have a great couple great matchups coming up. But One of the things that KO said in the chat, he thought that GBITL was a very good match. Shout out to Gadarian for streaming it. I thought so too. One of the things that we're seeing trend wise in APL this season is a lot of the British maps, right? So we saw the LL main meta at the beginning with ESPT running it 2 weeks in a row. Now we're starting to see Drill come out, especially that Drill Night coming out. We saw it with Merc versus Lucky Strikes and Marauders in week 2, where Merc was pretty dominant. And what did we see in that one? We saw that tank play was so key, right? Your ability to be able to control the bridge with your tanks, get off angles, and be able to hold it down is so key. And then we saw that at the same time. We saw that with GBI versus TL. And the tank play was absolutely superb for GBI. They literally, I mean, like, other than a few pushes for TL, it was just an absolute slaughter on that bridge. And at some point in time, like, surely, these points aren't going to be the freaking bridge anymore because it's just an absolute slaughter fest. It just becomes an RD tank combo nightmare PTSD simulator on that bridge. But I thought that GBI continues to show that they are potentially the second best team in this tournament. I don't think I predicted that at all. I think I had Syndicate being up there, but not to step in too much to the preview. That will be probably decided next weekend. So really excited to talk about that as well.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to, I mean, we're at a very interesting situation because we're basically halfway, a little bit more than halfway now, done with the group stage, and it's been a wild ride. We're getting to sort of the end turf now, where the home stretch, where it's kind of a make it
Yeah.
or break it situation. These last 2 weeks are really going to matter, and a lot of these teams, like I think GBI, has done so well, really earned that number 2 spot, but also, Syndicate hasn't played a BA yet, right? They've played
No.
GLTL, so there's
Yeah.
there's some match disparity there. So you really don't know. I mean, like Syndicate could also just go in there and 5-0 BA. So I mean, like you said, we'll really find out this weekend where those two pair. I'll tab over to the pregame and we'll
You want to
just
go pregame? You want
yeah,
to talk a little bit? Yeah.
yeah, we'll just take a little peek at the week 4 schedule.
So GBI versus Syndicate, I was kind of previewing this a little bit. Absolutely. I mean, Division One. This is probably the most critical week of the season for Division One, just for the playoff picture, because you have GBI versus Syndicate, right? So they're going to be fighting over that 2 and 3 seed, most likely, given the fact that GBI is 2-1 and then Syndicate is 1-1. But then Broken Arrow and Glow's TL, they're both winless so far. Competitive, 100%. I think Broken Arrow was very competitive in that GBI matchup. In that week 1 matchup. Glow TL has been struggling, man. They've been definitely struggling. They had some good pushes up against GBI in that Drill matchup this week, but at the end of the day, they just weren't able to really mount anything, and certainly not able to hold. I believe Boatyard was the second point for them. They just couldn't hold on the Axis side 2 weeks in a row, where the Axis just really struggled on Drill. And so it'll be curious to see. Have they decided the map? That is the
I
There you
believe
go,
so.
Utah. So Broken Arrow is going to be on the Axis, and GLTL is going to be on the Allies on Utah. So and I think Utah is a little bit more Axis favored, in terms of if I had to pick one or the other. So it's gonna be really interesting to see on the predictions. But Broken Arrow versus GLTL, I mean, that is literally the match to decide who makes the playoffs and who doesn't at this point in time. Because going into week 5, I'd have to look at this. Let me look at the schedule real quick. So Glow and TL will have to play ESPT, who's undefeated, and then Syndicate will play BA. Those are 2 tough matchups for both of those teams. So this is literally one win may decide who makes it into the playoffs and not. So really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and then coming over to Division 2, we got Vanguard versus Ronin. I'm pretty excited
Yeah,
about that.
Yeah, I'm curious for all of our Brazilians in the chat, all of our South Americans in the chat who have been very supportive of both of us. These are two teams that have played together a lot. They played together in seasonals. They were a combo team along with Merck, so they know each other very well. Both are just such nice people. But Vanguard has just been absolutely dominant throughout this. So Ronan is definitely they definitely are. It's going to be a tough one for Ronan. They're not slouches at all though. They 5-0 3 fours in week 1. I think and they've had very competitive matches against 75th in the past. They've had very competitive matches against 3AC, and in fact, I think they won against 3AC, if I remember correctly, in what would that been, week 2? Oh, chat's gonna roast me. But Ronan is very competitive, but Vanguard just looks like the team to beat.
Yeah, no, I mean, I cannot agree more. And it's interesting. I mean, you even see you see Ronan at number 3 trailing behind, but not by much. I mean,
No,
it could be a pretty sweaty match, and I think it will. The map's been decided, correct? I
let me
think
look.
I think all maps have been decided. Uh,
Syndicate versus GBI has not been decided. They haven't even
ooh,
started it yet.
slacking.
So I know slacking. Ronan versus Vanguarda. It's gonna be on Utah Beach as well. Ronan gonna be on the Axis side, and then Vanguarda on the Allies. So Ronan a little bit more favorable in terms of the map position, but Vanguard are just so tough to beat, especially in terms of map control. So and infantry play is just phenomenal. So man, that's gonna be tough. That's gonna be I
Yeah, and I mean, all right, let's move down to game 2. I mean, this is kind of a similar situation to BA versus Glow TL. You know, this is 3 foys and 3 AC. I believe both teams do not have a win, and it this may also come down to this game deciding whether or not 3 foys or 3 AC are gonna make it in. You know,
there we go. Yep.
and this one's been decided, right?
For 3 fours versus 3 AC. Is that the one you're
Yeah.
talking about?
I gotta pull up my phone. I got back from the gym and I took a quick peek and
Are you talking
somebody
about
says,
3 fours?
yeah. Somebody says
Okay.
map's gonna
Yeah,
be
so three
SME.
fours, 3 fours versus 3 AC is going to be on SME. So 3 fours have the Axis and 3 AC have the Allies. We've seen a lot of SME over APL, and I mean, so far, I think the Allies have been largely been the ones taking it in terms of just sidewise. Obviously, that's not the end all be all predictor of what teams win, because especially since I think that 3 fours has just absolutely struggled. I really hope this is the matchup for them to make a rebound, make a comeback, and I think 3AC is a little bit of a need of a comeback as well after getting 5-0 against a really tough Vanguard team. So it'll be really interesting to see. I'm curious if the Aussies come and kind of prove themselves a little bit. But I kind of see this as 3AC's match to win. Their chance to kind of solidify their place in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I was on more of a meme cast this weekend. I'm sure I know you saw that.
I did. I did.
um, with 3 foys versus 75 OG, and I mean, they had some
Had their
interesting.
moments.
Yeah, they retook that.
Airhead on second, that like they flooded that point, clean airhead on that second point.
Yeah, very impressive. Not some. I think that's something that kind of blew everybody away. You know, you saw some really key players on both sides. You know, you saw Throat Goat and who was it, Stephen Gawking, both play.
Yeah, I think Stephen Gawking is going to be a fan favorite by the time that APL is over, especially after that stream right there. Because we saw him in the 75th versus Vanguardia match where he was just holding down buildings like a banshee, man, like at just all by his lonesome, basically. So it's he's becoming a fan favorite for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, there was definitely a little bit of chaos. That was the first time that I've ever seen Panther being used. I think there was a little bit of miscommunication with
Yeah,
the commander. From my understanding, he just wasn't really fully aware of how APL rules works. You know, it happens. But,
it does.
you know, as a caster, seeing that for the first time, seeing a Panther in the APL, and, you know, in these tournaments that, like, do not use the Panther,
It's a
I was,
first.
yeah, I was like, no way. What am I watching?
It's the Panthers' debut at APL.
You
And
almost can't identify it anymore when you see it because you see it
I
and you're like,
know.
what is that tank? I've never seen it before.
Absolutely. I think the one thing to take away from that is just to keep in mind it really didn't impact the result all that much. You know,
Right.
I know that it was a forfeiture, but really it was progressing to a 5-0 when it was all said and done. It just wasn't like for all of Three Foy's efforts, it really just wasn't going their way other than a few key moments like that airhead. And I thought that airhead was absolutely brilliant. It certainly gave them a lot of hope. But at the end of the day, I think 75th just have overwhelming skill and just and map control, and they just continue to push and push and push Three Foys until it was no more.
Yeah, I think also at the end of the day, I remember speaking with a few Europeans about this. I can't remember who for the life of me, but they were talking. I was asking some people about, you know, what they thought of the Panther ban and uh, kind of where their stance was. And a lot
Yeah.
of them said, like, at this point, the Panther doesn't really like matter as it's a little bit more balanced. But the big issue for the Panther ban is to not allow one team to spawn two heavies and have two different cooldowns
Right.
versus having one team with only one real heavy cooldown because Jumbo 75 is Garbo. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think that's still valid, and I think that also didn't apply when we saw this happen. You know,
Yeah.
it's not going to make or break a game at the end of the day. It is, but it is a rule. So overall, very interesting. You know, back into Division Three. You
Yeah.
know, we got Merc versus 173rd. That'll be an interesting match.
It will be. It will be. Merck has been, I think, pretty clearly at this point the number one team in the division. Not just if you look at like their standings, but just even if you watch their matches, just been. It's interesting because it's not like it's been 5-0 after 5-0 after 5-0. Merck 3-2 against 10th Mountain. Um, but this week they came out shining. They came out shining against
Chad BR1, I believe,
Chad
because I think the
BR1. Yeah,
footage was lost, right?
it was, but it was a 29-minute 5-0, and
Wow.
so very 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 dominant. I think Chad BR1 has been definitely disappointing. I think that they had a lot of high hopes, especially for that Chad component of their team. They've been extremely strong. Whenever you watch FNFs play with them and FNFs play against them in FNFs, they've been extremely competent. I think this has been a little bit disappointing of a showing for Chad BR1. It's not over yet. It is not over yet. Division 3 is probably the most open division out of all the divisions out there. But and they have a favorable matchup against, I would say a favorable matchup, just given the fact that 10th Mountain has struggled too. So these are two teams that one of these teams is going to get a playoff spot when it's all said and done. So it'd be really interesting to see. And then Merck versus 173rd, obviously, 173rd's in a really unique spot given the fact that they won against Chad BR1. So now they're really trying to hold that third spot. It is that third spot is theirs to hold. If they can get at least one win within the next 2 weeks, given the fact that Merck is going to be such a tough matchup, but then next week they played 10th Mountain, which is a favorable matchup for them. So I think that um, you know if 173rd can get a win within the next 2 weeks, man, they're going to have a very favorable seeding because I don't think they want to face Merck first week in the playoffs. I think Mikey's Marauders, Lucky Strikes, as good as they've been, that is a more favorable matchup for them. And so they're really fighting for seeding at this point going into the playoffs.
Yeah, It's funny. I'm the one who made the graphic, but I'm not sure how the playoffs work. If it's going to be 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, or if it's 1 versus 2, uh, 3 versus 4.
1v4, right? Like, and if it, I think, I mean, that's usually how it's done. And if
That's
that's
what
the
I would
case,
assume. Yeah.
like seeding is important, and for 173rd and Lucky Strikes and whichever, I think 10th Mountain and Chad Beater won, they'd had to win out the next 2 weeks to have even the possibility. And I think 10th Mountain would have to, it would be 10th, the only 10th Mountain would have the chance at getting at that third seed, and they'd have to win 2 straight weeks. Definitely a possibility against Chad Beater one. That's a pretty split matchup. But then they got to go and beat 173rd, and 173rd has shown that they're not slouches at all. Despite them struggling in week one, they had a really good, really great match in week two against Chad Beater one. So
Yeah, I definitely have my opinions, but I'll hold it for the predictions. You want to go ahead and get started, and we'll go back up from the top.
oh
And
no, we doing it so we can get roasted.
well, we could do our
Um,
we can do our predictions now, or we can go over your favorite, your player of the week, RD of the week, and tank of the week.
let's get the predictions over with, because I know I'm gonna get roasted. I know I'm gonna get roasted. I know you're gonna get roasted, but it's okay. It's totally fine. So obviously that schedule, we can go division one.
Yeah, yeah.
So GBI versus Syndicate, this is the closest matchup of the week. It is the closest matchup of the week. This is literally fighting over second seed. It's such an important match. um I said it last week, and I'll say it again. I think that GBI is the number two team in the division. As stacked as Syndicate is, especially coming into this tournament, um, GBI has just been absolutely dominant. They 4-1 against Glow TL. They were incredibly strong against Broken Arrow. I think they got some pieces where they need to line it up, but their tank play has just been incredibly strong, and they have great infantry as well. Their commander Prawn Hub is just he's stood out among a lot of the commanders. I think GBI close 3-2 against Syndicate, not even knowing the map. I'm gonna give it 3-2 GBI.
Interesting. I'm gonna swing the opposite.
Okay.
I think Syndicate's gonna win 3-2. And what am I basing this off of? Well, I believe they both 4-1 GLTL, and so I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
throw that out the window as basically same. Well, I guess that is something to consider. But the match I'm really thinking about is ESPT. They've both played ESPT now.
Yeah.
ESPT 4-1 GBI, and they only 3-2'd Syndicate. Um,
Yeah.
and Syndicate was playing on El Alamein. And I'll say
Both
this.
both matchups were on El Alamein.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Of course, of course.
And
uh,
on top of it, Syndicate held third point until the last 10 minutes. It was theirs to lose going into the last 10 minutes of the
yeah,
match, basically, or last 15 or whatever it was. Like, it was tight. It was really tight. They made ESPT sweat. It was looking like Syndicate could pull it.
yeah. And I mean, man, yeah. I gotta give it based on the ESPT, and I think GBI's strong suit is their tanking. Their infantry is definitely getting up to snuff and effectively on par by this point with their tanking. But the one thing that separates the two teams in my eyes is match planning. And this is not to say that GBI is not good at match planning. They do absolutely insane amounts of work week on week. But I mean, in NA, if you're gonna name a team that's really good at just match prep and stratting, it's got to be like Syndicate. I think maybe even
Yeah.
more so than ESPT. I mean, ESPT definitely has the shooters to compensate, but I'd go so far as to say like with a good map and a good side, I mean that really could just come down to it. But I'll take Syndicate 3-2 here. So
Okay. Well, we're split on that, so it'll be interesting to see how that ends up turning out. BA versus Glow TL. This is a fight for a playoff spot, is what this is, because I believe Broken Arrow will have to play Syndicate next week, and in Glow TL will have to face ESPT next week. And I don't see any of those matchups as favorable. So, I mean, literally, like the fourth seed is gonna come down to one win, and that's between Broken Arrow and uh, Glow TL. I'm giving it to Broken Arrow. I'm gonna give it 3-2, but I think it's a dominant 3-2. And I just Glow TL has just absolutely struggled. I think that like now, mind you, they're playing such tough opponents, but you look at their match against GBI and how competitive. Like I'm gonna take your system when both these teams have played GBI at this point, and what did they do? Well, Broken Arrow, I mean, came real close to winning against GBI at times. They struggled for a bit, but they got, they kind of shook off the cobwebs and forced it into an extremely competent match, competitive match on that. I believe it was SMDM. Yeah, SMDM. Uh, and then Glow TL got just just push back 4-1 on Drill. Maybe it's an artifact of the fact that they're running as Axis on Drill. But man, GBI just tore Glow TL's tanks apart. And so I'm gonna give it to Broken Arrow 3-2.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm pretty set on this. I know Keo's in the chat. He said Sin and BA for Division 1 wins for him. I think I'm going to go the same. I think I'm also just going to say 3-2. Anything could really happen. It is Utah. I actually favor the Allies a little bit more, at least
Really?
on
Okay.
I think on that southern point, you have the funnel in from Grandma's. You do have a bit more open fields, but I think it's a little
True.
bit easier if you have control to maintain control on a lot of those points, especially like that north point with all that barbed wire. I'm blanking on all these names outside of Chapel. Chapel
Sure.
is definitely more of a mixed bag, but anything really goes. But yeah, I think here's my grand strategy. I think BA wins this match 3-2, and I think BA then kind of screws himself over and gets gets what do you call it, the fourth.
Fourth
Well,
seed, so they got to play
oh right,
ESPT
yeah, yeah,
in week one of the playoffs in the quarterfinals
yeah. For some reason I thought
or
they'd both
semifinals.
be able to make it, but yeah, yeah. I guess
No, one or the other. It's BA or Glow
right.
TL.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think I still got to go BA on this one.
I am too. I am too. All right, Division Two, Vanguard versus Ronin. I think this is a. Oof. As much as I love this matchup, I think it's a pretty easy one for me. I'm gonna go Vanguard 4-1. I think Vanguard has just been absolutely dominant. Ronin's been very good too. They 5-0'd 3 foys. But I think that we're starting to see the cracks a little bit with Ronin, just a little bit in terms of like being able to compete at the top of the division. But I also think that they're a team that, like, first off, probably going to stay in that third seed. They're probably going to stay in that third seed. And when it comes to playoff time, if they come up against 75th, you don't know how that's going to turn out. And I think that they may have a real chance to compete in the playoffs, but I just right off the onset 4-1 Vanguarda. And the map for that one, I think we talked about it earlier. It's going to be SMDM, and man, I'm just gonna give it to the Allies on SMDM. Yeah, yeah, and I'm praying that it's not dugout for the
Yeah,
midpoint.
yeah.
But yes,
I think I gotta agree with you. I mean, I don't know where I stand on the cap pressure. I think Vanguarda has shown just how dominant they are. I mean, it really blows me away. Not just in their strats and their play style and their passive play style, even their armor, uh, going toe to toe with 75 OG, but also their creativity. I mean, they brought something to the scene that even shocked the likes of Excel, as he was saying last week.
yeah,
That third story AT gun was quite the sight. Uh,
they didn't even know ESPT had never didn't even know you could put an AT gun up there.
yeah, yeah. So very creative. I'll see. The problem is there's so many 5.0s this week. I feel inclined to take a lot more 5.0s. So
Really?
I'll give them the 5.0. I think they can 5.0 Ronin.
Okay.
Um, Ronan's probably gonna come after me a little bit
I
for
know.
saying that,
No, they're too
but
nice. They're too nice.
yeah, I mean, I'm very curious to see. I mean, both of these teams, um, have really wowed me this season. So I'm gonna take Vanguard 5-0.
By the way, Texie Doe, I think GBI and BA wins, and I'm pretty confident in ESPT's ability to win their bye. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Three Boys versus three AC, two three teams. Both these teams, 3AC. I'd have to look at that. Let me look at the standings real quick. So 3AC and 3 4s are both 0-2 going into this. After 3AC got 5-0'd by Vanguarda. Am I thinking about that right? No, or was it 75th?
Three Foys got 5-0'd by 75 OG this weekend, and Vanguard 5-0 3AC.
So two teams coming off of 5-0s. 3 4s coming off two consecutive 5-0s. There was some shining moments for 3 4s. But I will say this: when 3AC played Ronin, it was a extremely competitive match on Hurricane Forest. Very competitive match. I think it ended 3-2 Ronin. So, just based on their ability to play, I think the one thing that we see from 3AC is they continue to evolve and grow. Because despite the fact that they're in Division Two, they're still a pretty green team in terms of playing in competitive. I think you're still seeing their identity being established, and boy, your sister clan. I'm sorry, I just saw the comment. Um, but I think 3AC is going to continue to build their identity out, and I think their identity is, how aggressive or conservative do we play as a team? How, trying to figure out that balance in terms of keeping their line out and map control and that sort of thing. We've seen a lot of creativity from 3AC, a lot of good, good tactics and solid gameplay. Um, the tanking needs to continue to evolve and improve, but I thought we saw that when 3AC played against Ronin. So I'm gonna give it to 3AC, and I'm gonna give it a 4-1 for 3AC. So I got 2 4-1s for Division Two in Week 4.
Ooh, spicy, spicy. I have a question for you since I know you've caught a few more VODs than me. How
Mhm.
has Three Foys tanking been? Because I think I'm gonna weigh this a lot on tanking here.
Not non-existent. I'll be honest. I think that like I've not. First off, it's kind of hard given the fact that these 5-0s have been pretty quick.
Yeah.
Um, but that being said, 75th ran all over 3 4's tanks, all over, and so man, I just I don't I hope they prove me wrong, but I have not seen a whole lot of good tank plays from 3 4s. That maybe someone in the chat can tell me off and tell me I'm wrong, and I would be happy to listen. But I just have not seen a whole lot of good tank plays from 3 4s for sure.
Yeah, I think 3AC too. I mean, to me their main struggle. It almost reminds me, being a part of BA, especially when it was in its prime. Being a part of a team that has pretty good infantry, but really struggles on the armor side. I see a lot of that in 3AC. I think 3AC will probably win here, but I am very curious to see because they are going up against a very different playstyle. I would consider
Very.
3 Foy's playstyle not to be the meta line strat that you see, but more of, encircle the cap and try and find a
Mm-hmm.
hole and sort of surround them.
Yeah.
So as long as if 3AC can adapt to that and play slow, kind of what I was talking about with Ronin 3AC, I think in week 2, I want to say that was. I
Meta
think
Panther. They ran the Panther meta. And that's a Texie just said that. But yeah.
yeah, I think I'm gonna go 4-1 too. I have no idea. I don't see a 5-0. I don't see a 5-0 in my eyes. I think it's going to be a sloppy 4-1, I think 3 Foys might make a mistake and lose their
Maybe back
fourth.
and forth. You
Yeah,
think
yeah,
there's gonna be a lot
something
of
like
cap
that.
flips? Hmm.
I mean, this is, my mind is turning and you could see the gears like slowly creaking around. At the
I
end of the
think
day, who knows, but something
I think
about it.
this is the match that will define three fours and three AC for a long period of time. I really think so because, like, first off, this is their chance to get into the playoffs. Both of these teams, they need a win to get into the playoffs. This is if they if either of these teams lose, they're out pretty much. And so 3AC I think they're going to continue to evolve, and I think three fours they have a chance to prove themselves. This is a favorable matchup for either one of these teams as they're going to see throughout the regular season. So I think we're going to have a way bit different. We may have a very different opinion about either one of these teams after week, and I'm excited for the recap next week because we're going to learn a lot about this matchup. So what? Don't threaten me with a good time. Sloppy 4-1. Yeah. KO. Yeah. For sure. Um, Anything else on Division Two on that matchup? Because it's really that 3-4 is 3AC one is a really interesting one. I
I
can't hear you.
think
There
uh
you go. Yeah.
I think for the bye week, it's going to be pretty interesting. You might see somebody from 75th pop out of the woodwork and do some casting this week. So even though they are on a bye, you might see some action from 75th on the casting side of things, which is going to be really
Yeah.
exciting. I love interacting with guy like new casters. I think APL really gotten a lot of new casters on the scene. I mean, you and I talk a lot about this, but
Absolutely.
you got some old heads. You've seen Gadelian, you've seen Das Altberg stream a few matches. Even Jimbo got a match. All these
Yeah,
guys,
Jimbo.
been around for ages. But you've also seen some new guys. You saw,
Axhawk.
yeah, Axhawk with BR1 TV. You know, I know Mo's been around for quite a bit now, but also, this was the first time I've really got to interact with him and kind of talk to him a bit. And super dope guy. I love that guy. Um, really awesome personality. Very intelligent about how the game is played. Even Ogser, really only casted one match, uh, but it was his first time casting, and he did an excellent job. So really
Absolutely.
curious on the
I
casting
was very
side.
impressed. He did the 3-4s versus Ronan match in week one. I thought he did it for his first time. Did a phenomenal job. Absolutely. So Division Three, Merc versus 173rd. I think I said this before when we were kind of previewing these. I Merc is just the team to beat in Division Three, and um, I think what we saw against Lucky Strikes, Mikey's Marauders, great tank play. I know it's on drill, but like great tank play. And with Gold Star and his crew at the front, they're probably one of the top tank crews. Not it's a competitive uh, tanking game in Division Three. But Gold Star and his crew have been great so far, and so they took a 5-0 against 3AC, and oh, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. They took a oh gosh, what was that matchup? Merc played. Gosh dang it. Merc played Chad Beater 1 and then 5-0'd them in uh, really quick fashion. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch the VOD because it got lost, but it happens. But that being said, I mean, just absolutely dominant against Chad Beater 1 and 173rd. It was a close matchup against Chad Beater 1. So I'm going to give it 3-2 against Merc. I'm trying not to let my bias get in the way, but I'm going to give it 3-2 to Merc.
Really. Now, keep in mind, Lucky Strikes Marauders, I believe 5-0'd 173rd, and they lost 3-2 to Merc.
So here's what I would say about this, and this is something that we haven't talked about a whole lot about any team. I think that Division Three is a little bit different in the fact that you get some teams that are not as experienced. They're still kind of figuring out their identity, still working out some of the kinks. They may have not run 35s or 40s or whatever it is, and um, Sorry, I was reading a comment. And week one, I think for 173rd was a little bit of a shaking off. They got absolutely dominated in week one, no doubt about it. They got absolutely dominated by Lucky Strikes, Mikey's Marauders, and it almost felt like we saw a different team in week two. They had a bye week last week. There may be some changes going on, but at the end of the day, I think that there's a lot of good core elements to Ghost Squad. But Merc is so solidified. They're very good. They're very talented. They're very solid throughout. And I'm still gonna give it 3-2. I would say dominant 3-2. I would say dominant 3-2 with the potential that if luck if 173rd goes back to the way they played in week one, where they didn't respond to threats in real time, could get 5-0'd real easy. But if they remember the core principles of how this game is played, can still make it competitive in 3-2.
Interesting, interesting. I will go back here. Yeah, I think you bring some valuable points to the table. I do got to say though, I think I'm going to go Merc here with a 5-0.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And I could be wrong. I said potential like if they it depends on who shows up. Is it week 1 173rd or is it week 2 173rd? And yeah, I think so.
My problem is I think you make any mistake, Mark will turn any week one
I
or week
know.
two team into the worst version of itself.
I know.
Um, Merck's just been really dominant and I'm gonna be the one to really eat my words here, as I was the one who was originally saying like, man, they're not number one going into this, but they've really shown themselves. I think what it comes down to it is not just like their tanking and their gunplay, but their stratting. I can when casting a match or watching a VOD of theirs, it's very clear to see what was going on in their head within like the pre-match or sort of the thought process behind it. And I like that. That shows me that, just kind of like what KO said, Div 3 is theirs to lose, and they're bordering on needing to be in Division 2. I think where the placements started and where we should, like, if we had to recast them now, I would definitely say Merc would probably be in Division 2. Um,
I think so too. I,
but yeah, I think it's going
I
to be a
would put
5-0.
Merc above Three Foys. I really would. I think you could easily swap out those two teams um and Three Foys kind of prove themselves in Division Three a little bit if they want to continue to play in APL.
Yeah. Yeah, hard agree. I think it's going to be a 5-0. So what about oh, Bibles, don't be so mean. Um, we got 10th
We
Mountain
love
and
the test.
Chad BR1. So I just said a 5-0. I think, man, I didn't get to see this VOD because it was lost. So I'm
I know.
very curious to see what happened. But I almost want to go 5-0 on this one too.
For who?
For 10th Mountain. I think 10th Mountain will 5-0 Chad BR1.
Whoa.
I mean, they've been they're I just, there's not been much in the eyes of Chad BR1 for me, which is really sad to say,
I
because
know.
I think I had them at number 2 and I had Merc all the way at number 3. Um,
With Marauders at 1.
yeah, and I caught that one match. It was you casting 173rd versus Chad BR1. To me that blew me away. And not just,
Yeah.
the map state, the state of the game, the players, the reckless tank plays, but also like building defenses. I, you know, that is a cardinal sin. I mean, people will joke about like running medics and things like that, but the amount of resources that it takes to build, the time for it to be effective for defenses, and also the fact that
He was on
99%
second
of
point too.
yeah, and 99% of defenses can just be used against you.
Yeah.
Barbed wire may be viable in certain areas if you really want to shut them out. I think like like Utah, what is it, WN4? You could, there's
Yeah.
some viable places technically for barbed wire, but even then, I mean, it's a stretch, and it sadly it really makes me lose confidence in a team when I see that type of thing, because I think you get in a tournament like APL, even though we have a lot of new and upcoming teams, you're going to get punished for not playing right. I mean, you're seeing this with Three Foys. Three Foys is not playing the line meta, and they're currently being punished for it. And I think you're seeing the same thing with Chad BR1, where it's okay to go a little bit off meta, but I think you need to strat around the meta and keep that in mind when playing these games. Um,
I go back to that, and as I agree. I go back to watching 173rd versus Chad Beer one, and what I saw was what you were talking about. But I also saw where a squad leader drove a supply truck around, identified a backline garrison, and left it. He left it. He built a garrison within 100 meters of it, maybe even less than that. It was open because no one was out on the back line. But what ended up happening was they got a solid push, maybe even two spawn waves off of the garrison to get some cap pressure. And 173rd just they addressed it, they responded to it, they pushed through, and I mean they were literally able to like pinch the attacking garrison on the back side of that church on what would be Omaha, or is it Utah on the back of Utah. And it just like there is just some critical mistakes that I'm seeing from Chad BR1, stuff that I think could get cleared up really easy. It is just decision making in the in like in real time. You'll be able to choose like, do I go and take out this garrison or do I go set up the spawn? I think go take out the garrison. Don't be putting a garrison right next to where the backline garrison is for the enemy, especially after you identified where it's at. You literally saw it. And so I think it's just an absolutely critical mistake. And if Chad Beater one continues to do this, 10th Mountain will punish them for it. 10th Mountain will punish them for it because what do we see from 10th Mountain going up against Merc? Was it Merc? No, Lucky Strike Marauders. They they made it extremely competitive. It was a 5-0, sure. I think that speaks to Marauders' capabilities, and give a lot of credit to Marauders. But man, like 10th Mountain's got some good shooters, and they made it competitive at times. They pushed back, and they're kind of going back and forth at times. So um, I go 3-2 for Chad BR1 and Chad BR or for sorry for 10th. I'm sorry, and Chad BR1 needs to be very careful because it could turn into a 4-1 or a 5-0 if they keep making decisions the way they're making them, going outside of the strat. Keep it simple, stupid. And I think that's what they need to keep in mind. None of this fancy stuff. Don't try to break the meta. Just play, good solid hell let loose. Map control, line control. Don't be super aggressive with your tanks, but also don't be super conservative. Pings, communications, all this, and it's solid decision making. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a valuable point. So with that, we do have somebody to bring on board. We have a
oh, sweet.
Yeah, so we do have our boy XL, who we all know and love.
Yeah.
Let's drag him up. What's up, XL? Welcome to the stream. Once again, we're not telling people, but welcome.
How's it going?
Oh, it's
Not
going
much.
good, man.
So we just got done with. I'm sure you watched the stream, but we just got done with our predictions. I'm kind of curious what your predictions are. Obviously, you've already made one prediction, or your boy KO already made one prediction that ESPT were going to win their bye week.
We're hoping
Um,
for it. Yeah, we're hoping for it. We're planning on it.
your Division One. I think this is like I said before. I think this is the most critical for Division One in terms of setting the playoffs. Um, a part of it is because you guys are on bye, so we got very competitive matches going into this week. GBI versus Syndicate and then Broken Arrow versus Glow TL. I'm curious what your thoughts and predictions are for that Division One because it kind of sets the landscape for how possibly the playoffs end up lining out.
For sure. I think this week, the match to watch is absolutely GBI versus Syndicate. Maybe even one of the most important matches in the tournament is this one right here. I think it's going to be the most competitive. I think it kind of sets the stage for the playoffs, gets them the correct seating. And this could even be, I don't know what the seating is going to be like, but this could be a matchup going into the playoffs as well. So this kind of sets the stage for it. Both teams are looking really good. I'm really impressed with GBI. I think they've kind of had things clicking together and they've just been getting better over the past couple months. And then Syndicate, I think I would really want to know what map they're playing on, what side
Yeah,
they're playing
they
on.
I think we expedited the process because they're now picking it. Literally as our stream is gone, they didn't have a single pick on it. They've made 2 picks, so no Kharkov Knight and no Kursk Knight for allies and Axis.
Oh my
Uh,
god.
so they're trying to get rid of those Russian maps right off the bat, I guess. So
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I think as well with the timing of Syndicate being a half NA, half EU team. I think it's always kind of a coin flip. If they bring all of their best players, they can compete with the absolute best of teams. And maybe if they're a little bit light on the roster, then maybe it's a bit harder against a really stalwart GBI team. So it's going to be really hard. I'm going to go with the Australians on a close 3-2. Like either they recap in the last couple of minutes or they just barely hold on. I think this is going to be super close, but I'll pick GBI for that.
that's interesting. That was my pick.
Ooh.
Hap has Syndicate going 3-2, but I think all of us are saying it's close. It's going to be a tight one. Whoever gets to stream that, they're going to have a blast. It's going to be an absolute blast to stream that. So,
For sure.
um,
Uh,
BA versus Glow TL. You guys, and I'm kind of curious. Um, BA made it competitive against you guys at the very beginning. That Hill 400 match. So kind of curious what your thoughts are on that BA team.
I think they're really good. I think they're missing a couple things on strategy because I feel like their flanks are really good to when they pressured our fourth point. That was probably the most dangerous point of our match against them. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like when they're in the back line, they need to pinch in and wipe our front line first, is what they needed to do. And hopefully they make those adjustments. But they're super strong. And if they kind of shore up their front line, I think they have potential to 5-0 TL glows or 4-1
Wow,
is what I would say.
wow, I think I had 3-2 BA, and then what did you have? Did you have 5-0 half for BA?
No, I had 3-2 as well. I think
3-2
3-2
as
BA.
well.
I'll go
Man,
4-1.
you switching to 4-1, yeah. No, it's still strong. I think BA is the team to to win this matchup for sure. I think you know I'm kind of curious too. I know you me watched part of that Glow TL versus GBI matchup, and Glow just seemed to just struggle in a couple spots. One of them was there was a lot of armor dominance by GBI on drill. I don't know if it's an artifact of the fact that we've had 2 weeks in a row where armor dominance on the side of drill has been like absolutely dominant. But also it just seemed like Glow was just a little bit slow on solid getting across the river, getting multiple angles of attack on the bridge. So kind of curious your thoughts on Glow TL because that kind of sets the stage going into this BA Glow TL matchup.
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell. I mean, obviously they're kind of in a like rebuilding stage. They have a lot of new players, so I don't think they ever came in with the expectations of wiping the floor with everyone else. So I think they're just kind of growing and getting these players into the right spots. So um like I think they're kind of doing the right things. Like I think kind of they're in the beginning stages. Maybe they should have been in Division 2, but I
Mm,
think they have high skilled players. I think they just kind of need to get their strategies right, get more experience on their players, and I'm sure they'll be much better very soon.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree.
All right. What about these Division Two teams? I mean, I know your boys, 75th OG, aren't playing this week, so I know we may or may not see you in the casting slot this weekend.
Maybe, maybe
Um,
not.
Potentially.
Potentially. Uh, but we got Vanguard and Ronin in three foys and three AC. Who you got?
I mean, I think Vanguard is super super strong in their matchup. I think they need to take it seriously though. I don't think Ronin is anything to scoff at. Um, so Vanguard need to take it very seriously to take the win, but I would expect them to be super dominant. I would say.
We spent some time talking about this three fours, three AC matchup. This is a really important matchup for the tournament because both these teams are 0-2 coming into this week. I mean, and unfortunately for three fours, they've been 5-0 2 straight weeks, and then three AC just got 5-0'd by Vanguarda. Kind of curious your take on both these teams because both these teams are kind of fighting for a chance to be in the playoffs and not get pushed down to Division Three.
I think this is going to be a super chaotic match, and I think it's going to be really fun to watch on SME.
Yeah.
I really hope it's SME as the midpoint because I think those matches are just so fun to watch in 35v35. It's just so chaotic. You really can't clear the sectors fully. It's just going to be everyone's just going to be throwing haymakers that match. It's going to be absolutely crazy. I think both teams struggle a little bit with the front line. I heard you guys talking about when I tuned into the stream, the three foys having a little bit of an issue on the front line. So I'd probably pick 3AC to win it, but gonna be I think it's gonna be absolutely crazy. I don't think it's gonna be one sided by too much, but I think 3AC will probably win 3-2.
Yeah, and
Perfect.
did we have a map for that, by the way?
Yeah,
Yeah,
SME.
SME.
SME. Okay.
I do too. I hope it's that midpoint because you see crazy stuff around that church, my man. Like, oh, love it. I love it. Although I'll say this, Checkpoint was super fun to watch too in that 75th versus Vanguarda match as well. So I mean, man, I mean, even hospice. I mean, hospice is quite often used. I mean, hospice was the midpoint when ESPT. I hate to bring it up again. ESPT versus WTH in the seasonals finals. So, but that was a great match to watch too. Literally, all three midpoints can make it super exciting. So, I'm really curious about that one. Um, so in the chat, I'm kind of curious because I'm gonna skip Merc and 173 for now. There's some hot takes. I think there's a lot of takes on this 10th Mountain Chad BR1 matchup. So Mo has it. Chad BR1 sneaks a win on 10th. Half had a 5-0 for 10th Mountain. I had a 3-2 for 10th Mountain. Curious your thoughts. Obviously, the background is Chad BR1. They are coming off of their second loss of the tournament. They lost against Lucky Strikes. Mikey's Marauders beat 10th Mountain 5-0, and then Merc 5-0 Chad BR1. And I think it was in like how long? 28 minutes? 28 minutes? 29 minutes. There you go. Very quick 5-0. So kind of curious what your thoughts are, especially for a match that may determine a playoff spot.
I want to know if Mo the Toe watched the 10th Mountain Lucky Strikes, Mikey Marauder match.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
That was a good match.
Because that was a 5-0, but that was not. I mean,
Not a
10th Mountain,
conventional 5-0.
Not at all. They recapped the
very
point.
competitive. Very
It was all over
competitive.
the place.
Back and forth. Yeah.
I was skimming through that a little bit, and I think they just have a little bit of an issue. I mean, Utah is really hard as well for 35s because you're trying to cover so much territory. So the thing that I've been pretty impressed, honestly, with the preparation and the seriousness that Division 3 teams have been taking the tournament with strategy. You can really see the intention of what they're trying to do the majority of the time. Maybe even sometimes more than Division 2. I think Division 3 has been at least maybe the execution is off, but you see what they're trying to do. I think the thing they're struggling with is that with 35s, especially, is that you're trying to control the choke points on the map so that you can hold it with less people. So sure, you
Mm,
clear an area with 7 people, but you're overwhelming that position, so you only have to hold it with two, and then you can flex those people elsewhere. I think the teams are having a little bit of trouble with that right now, but and then 10th kind of gave it up to playing a little bit too much on offense, not enough on defense, and they just couldn't like flex back in time to prevent their points being taken. But that was not like a real steamroll by any means. So I think 10th probably 4-1s or 5-0s if they bring that same attitude that they brought to the last match.
yeah. Well, and half had it 5-0 for 10th Mountain, so I guess it's not a hot take because most people have it at that. So
Yeah, and I mean we'll get into it a little bit later with our like player of the weeks, but I do have at least one of my contenders from 10th Mountain. I mean, they played a mean game. You had Rafi, who has kind of come up from nowhere and made a name for himself. Drop a lot of kills. I want to say he was like top five at least. You also had
yes,
their artillery player drop a lot of kills. Overall, like a very high kill. They got some mean shooters on there. So
Rafi with 98 kills
yeah.
in that 10th Mountain loss. So
And I
very
think like
very
if you're looking at stats like and you take into consideration the deficit caused by a 5-0 and then you look at players on those teams that got 5-0'd and you see how well they performed regardless of the 5-0, that tells a story in its own. You look at the one match I always say is like BA versus Greyhounds. They got 5-0'd, but there were some people that really shined in that match. And I think that type of story where even if you get 5-0'd, you're going to see who really makes an impact. And in my eyes, like 10th Mountain has those people that are going to make an impact, even if they get 5-0'd.
yeah, I 100% agree. I'm kind of curious. So we're about to do our top, like, I don't know what you call it, golden boot, top player of the week, top. Um, I'm curious. Did you have any standouts from the week? Any guys? Any crews? Any commanders maybe that stood out to you after watching any of the matchups this week?
For me,
Yeah, yeah,
I think the tank crews from GBI really stood out. I know when we were kind of watching a little bit of it, their intentions with like the timing and the placement of that tank sweep just under the bridge to wipe all the OPs, like
yeah.
that's brilliant.
With that
That's
light
so
tank
good.
play, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's so good. And then their tanks were just so dominant. I felt like they couldn't really get a handle on them from Glow's TL. So I would probably say the tank crews from GBI probably stood out the most for me.
And I'll put a name to the face on that. So the tank crews for the Jestas and Aviation was in one of the tank crews, and I believe the other was Ready Fish, Meat Patty, and let me get that last name, Centigram. So those are the five tankers for GBI. I have those guys as my tank crew as well. So I absolutely agree on that. Half, did you have a tank crew of the week?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with this GBI crew. I mean, they were just absolutely stunning
It's
this
hard.
week.
It's hard to beat. It was really in both of them. I would include both crews as well because that on the bridge they held so good. Like I mean, just kept TL from making really any push into the point. And then that light tank play was just absolutely brilliant, like what XL was talking about. So, um, I'll go into we're gonna do something a little bit different because we kind of did it impromptu, so I have a little prepared this time. My arty guy of the week. So Merck had this. I didn't get to watch it. Okay, so I'm going purely based off of stats. Okay, Merck versus Chad Bureau 1. It was 29 minutes. Okay, Brook from Merck. He had 58 kills on Artie, but it was in 29 minutes, so his KPM was 2, which is very impressive. I'm gonna give Artie, even despite the fact it was a short match and it was 58 kills, the fact that he got 58 kills with it moving at that, they're moving, moving points. I think is absolutely impressive. Brook gets my Artie player of the game, or Artie player of the week. I'm sorry, from Merc. So, I don't know if you have a Artie player of the week, Excel,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Probably I probably don't even know the names of the majority of the Artie players that
I've
played.
had to learn them, man.
Do you have a
But
team?
yeah, you could do a team.
Um, let's see. I mean, I wish that match was streamed.
I
That
know.
Merc one.
Yeah, it's so sad.
I was the 75th Refoys. I felt like the 75th Artie was pretty solid. I felt like they kind of boxed them out a little bit with their Artie. Like there was just a couple times where I was watching the stream and the Artie would just get a clutch kill, preventing like someone pushing through the gap, and that's really all you want from an Artie. Is it's not always necessarily about the kills. It's are you shutting down something on the map, and that's the most important, really.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's probably what I would value the most, since I wasn't able to watch the Merc stream.
Sure,
No,
sure.
yeah, it's definitely been tough. I feel like, especially on a Monday, you get very little time to watch all these VODs. Um, for my artillery of the week, I'm gonna go with T Riga from 10th Mountain. I think he did. I mean, at its core,
On
it
the
was
losing side at that
yes
too.
on the losing side. He, top. I think he was number 2 in kills. I think the only person that was higher than him was Large Mouse with 140 kills, and I want to say T Riga dropped 106 or 108, right around give or take 2. Um, to bounce around from point to point with how mobile that match was, going from drowned fields back to chapel and back to drowned fields. You know that man. That man also is notorious for just sort of like free aiming, I guess you could call it, and he doesn't necessarily rely on mills that much. He just pure muscle memory. To me, that's just really impressive. And I will say, there wasn't a lot going on for both artillery that game, but just the movement alone and the dedication to just like keep firing on those hit markers that you're getting, it was stunning to me. So, uh,
Yeah.
giving it to T Riga for sure.
Hell yeah. So let's dive into the infantry then. Let's get, because I know you have a infantry guy on lock for it. So infantry guy of the week for you.
For me,
Uh,
Yeah, for half.
I'm gonna give it to Ghana. Ghana did really well. Absolutely. I almost want to say it was back to back weeks. I think last week I also said it was Ghana, but Ghana putting
He
in the
was
work.
my player of the week last week. So
Oh, I think. Oh, I said Gonza Bolso and Pecky.
yeah, and Pecky. Yeah.
Yeah, but this week I got to give it to Ghana. I think Ghana played an absolute wonderful match.
Yeah.
We got
So
Soprano. Really happy to
his
hear that.
stat line 50 kills, KPM 1.04. Very strong. He led his team entire match in kills. Yeah, barely. Hunt ZX for 3AC had 46 um for 3AC in a 5. So yeah, 50 kills. What about you, XL? You got any guys that you were just watching and you're just like, man, this dude's slaughtering.
I would have to give it to Fortress on Esprit. He plays Flex MG for Esprit, so he would basically say, "Do whatever you want. You're going to be effective." And Hill 400 is not known as an MG map, and he went 96 and 29, a 3.31 KD. He's an absolute dog, and he doesn't really
Oh,
talk in many channels. He doesn't really talk outside of Esprit, but I know that people know who he is, and he's absolutely insane. Um, a lot of the success that Esprit's infantry has is because Fortress is just shutting people down and making everyone duck their heads. He's absolutely insane, and especially on Hill 400, putting up those numbers is absolutely ludicrous, I feel.
So a KO, to add on to what you just said, he said four, and if KO is saying that, then that means a lot. So yeah, that's crazy. I, I'm gonna go for the meme. I'm gonna go for the meme, and not just because of this week, but I saw this last week too in a loss at that. Stephen Gawking. I'm gonna give it to Stephen Gawking. Stephen Gawking is my player of the week. I wish I had the stat lines. I don't have the stat lines just because it didn't get posted to Hilo, but I just saw him in the mix all the time, getting threes and four pieces up. And when I watched him in the week two, I know it's for the week, but just to show how good he is, he held that building down in second point in that 75th versus Vanguard match. And I didn't even say who Stephen Gawking is for. 75th OG, 75th players. So he held down that building by himself, was holding the cap down basically alone. And I mean, that dude, he's a little bit of a rogue agent, but my gosh, man, if is he not effective or what? So
Yeah.
I know that your meme commentating crew was following him a lot, and for good reason, because he was absolutely studding it up.
Well, something to note too that I really took away from that stream that I thought was absolutely hilarious was he was so effective that as a sole infantry player, he got his own infantry mark. He was just that effective, you know. Being a solo player to get your
Golly,
own infantry mark, I think, is
that's
kind of like a
insane.
mark of respect, and I thought that was hilarious to see pop up on the map. But
Oh
yeah,
my gosh, that's incredible. Yeah, so that's that. So that's our players and tank crews, and I'll give one special shout out. I wasn't gonna do a commander, but the fact that Widow led his team in kills as the commander is insane too. Widow ended up with 85 kills, and only 5 of those kills were strafing runs and bombing runs. The rest were done with his goal. It quite insane that he was able to do that. Led his entire team with 85 kills, 9.944 KP. So I don't think I could do that ever in my. It would be hard for me to do that as infantry, nonetheless as a commander. So hats out to Widow as well. So yeah, crazy.
I'm not sure I've ever seen a commander go that high in kills
I don't either.
without bombing runs and stuff. That's crazy.
No, it was four bombing run kills, one strafing run. That's it. The rest on a night map, nonetheless. He must have been in the freaking thick of it. You know what I mean? Insane. Um, but yeah, man. Half. Do you got anything else on any of that? Just put out our
I
golden boots for the week.
yeah. I think that'll do it. But I do see Soprano in the chat with a really interesting comment. So Vanguard, I know they did have server issues with 3AC, and they said that they played effectively 2 matches, and Ghana did 50 plus kills in both games. So
Ghana's insane,
yeah,
dude.
that's nuts. Um, I'd be
I think
curious.
one.
Vanguard.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say Vanguard has some top of the line shooters. I feel like some of their best players are toe to toe with pretty much anyone in the game.
Yeah. So, and that's what I was gonna say too. So Ghana got 50, but then you look at like their top 5 guys. uh Granadero 46, Von Mack 8, Quintino 37. Last night 34. They literally have 6 guys with plus point 0.7 kpm. I mean, it's just like you just see like consistently good kill totals across the board. They have such a solid infantry team all around the board, and I think that's absolutely incredible. Best in the cell. I mean, it's hard not to like Vanguard so well. It's envious almost. So it's so exciting to watch. So so
yeah. I mean, going into these matches this week, I'm pretty curious to see, you know, if I do you have any predictions on like who you think players to look out for either of
Yeah.
you guys? I mean, we talk about Ghana, putting in the work. Maybe we'll see that against Ronan. Uh, you
Am I
know,
biased if I say Kantar and Boom? Am I biased if I say the SBSR tank crew for
no, I don't think
173rd?
so. 173rds, their armor has been the most surprising factor. I mean, Excel. I don't know if you've been watching this, but it really does remind me of like Division 1 style of tanking, and even like more so like ESPT tanking of just like that like very passive style, sitting back. The the trade that the hedgerow trading that you see.
For 173rd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
I haven't watched their games too closely. I'll definitely need to review that. I mean, I feel like if they're starting off with that kind of style of tanking, then they'll probably just get better and better because I know that sometimes tank crews, maybe they'll dominate in like a Division 3 league in the ECL on the European side, and then they join a higher team and they kind of just uh, get really surprised because their style of tanking doesn't work. So that's really good. I mean, the passive tanking is supposed to set up your infantry for success because you're trying to bait the enemy tanks out by like shelling enemy infantry. So by shelling enemy infantry, you make their tanks play more passive, or you make them play more aggressive and expose themselves to get killed. And then with the tank dominance, you can push. So it is kind of a style of tanking that can work. And if they're doing really good in it, then props to them.
Yeah. Obviously we got some teams coming off of bye. One of those is Broken Arrow. So my player to watch out for, and XL, you probably know him very well. I'm gonna put 1200 in there. I think 1200 is an absolute killer. They're gonna need him. They're gonna need him against Clotiel, and as a guy, he is absolute slaughterer. And I think for GBI, I mean, the easy names to pull out in that GBI syndicate match, guys like Riot, like Common is just an absolute slaughterer. But GBI has got some killers too. I mean, you look at their side in that last match, 0.911 KPM, 82 kills for GBI Widow. I think they got some great shooters, so it'll be really interesting to see GBI versus Syndicate on the infantry side.
I think Kisahomie is really great with GBI, and I'm pretty sure Coco is playing. He's an American player. I'm pretty sure he's playing for GBI. He's always like top of the leaderboard or very close to it. So those
Yeah,
guys are going to be putting up numbers, I bet.
heck yeah,
He's
heck
almost to
yeah.
me like a mimic of Fortress. He's really good at flexing around on that MG. Um, I know. I feel like in Division 1, MGs are so important. Just like the more you have, the better, and like the more you're able to shut down these lanes. And Coco does a really good job of flexing off those OPs and shutting down just different lanes when it matters the most. So that, and I mean, I think of like I think it was Pronhub running Commander and what he did to BA.
Oh my
And
gosh,
I mean, that's
crazy.
something I'm really curious to see if he's going to be commanding against the syndicate match coming up and what he's going to do because he's very well coordinated with his team. He knows when to pull out all the stops.
He's been one of the best commanders I've seen this entire. Like just watching him, his instincts are just absolutely. So I'm really curious. I think tank wise, I mean, we Kantar and Boom, but on the other side, they have a really tough matchup against Gold Star, and his crew. Gold Star, I mean, they're tanking absolutely phenomenal. Just like GBI dominant Drio, with their tanking. Merc did almost the same against Lucky Strikes, my characters the week prior, and so I would definitely call them out. I mean, that's maybe the matchup of the week in terms of just like individual matchups. The tanking between 173rd and Merc, that may be super key because if Gold Star gets beat or if Kantar Boom get beat, I mean, those the whoever wins that will slaughter until that next tank comes up. and it will be absolutely brutal. May end up being a lot more conservative tank play because of it. These guys they know like if you go down, like man, that's a good amount of time that you're not going to have some good armor superiority out in the so it'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know. I'm excited. I more so.
It's a great week.
Yeah, I
It's a
think this
great
is
week.
one of the best weeks, especially with the matchups. So many close matchups, so many important matchups too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. You guys have anything else to add?
I'm really excited for Syndicate in GBI tanking. I think the GBI tanks are on the come up, but Syndicate has some really stellar tankers that have kind of been a base of power for them for a little while. So I think that might be a deciding factor in that matchup is where the tanks are going to end up. I think that's going to be super important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I know casters should be assigned sometime tomorrow. I'll probably put up the casting sign up tonight.
Yeah, I was about to say. I was like, has the sign up?
I've definitely been slacking on that. Had a long day,
It's been
but
crazy. It's been crazy
um,
already.
but yeah. So people should have their casters coming up, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm sure everybody who's going to be assigned to those matches. I think we're talking about Syndicate GPI. That'll be by far the most requested match for casters. I mean, it's a great match. What
Yeah.
better coverage to have?
It's such an important match. And I think it's just absolutely competitive. It's going to be so close. And those are the matches that you want to cast. So,
Yeah.
I got a question because XL may or may not be casting. If you had a pick of what you want to cast, not like your match to watch or whatever you think is going to be the most important matchup, the match you want to commentate on, what would it be?
For any, it might not be. It's not this week, but the 75th Vanguarda, that is going to be a barn burner. I think. I
In the
think that's going to
playoffs,
be
basically, whenever it
yes.
comes.
I want to see them the deciding match of Division 2, the like Division 2 championship. That's going to be crazy.
We got to
I,
set like some standard for like the times. So like all the times for these finals or semis got to be staggered because I am going to be
I
glued to
know.
that screen.
I know, because then we're gonna have to turn on APL Red Zone. Savage coined it, and have like people are gonna have to have multiple streams up. We gotta stagger these finals, man. Got to, because I want to watch all of them. They're gonna be so good, so good. Do you have predictions for the finals? Like, who do you think are gonna be in the finals? Because I think I'm gonna go ESPT GBI in Division 1, 75th Vanguard. I think that's pretty clear cut, and then Merc, and I'm gonna go Marauders. I wanted to go someone, but I'm gonna go top two. It's gonna be uh Merc and Marauders.
I probably have to go the same.
Then
I guess I mean you have to see what the matchups are going to be. Like we said, GBI and Sin they're playing this week, and they're probably going to play in the semis as well if it's
right.
1v4 and 2v3.
Yep.
I think Vanguard and 75th are pretty heavy away unless Ronin surprises someone. And then yeah, probably Merc and Lucky Marauders,
I
unless
think
someone wraps it up and surprises us at the end.
Yeah.
I think the only question for me is it going to be we all seem pretty much in agreement, but it's going to come down to is it ESPT versus GBI or is it ESPT versus Syndicate in my
That is a
eyes.
good question. But this week will determine that, I think.
Right.
I think this week will determine that. Um I mean, and on top of it too, it will be really interesting to watch all three of these finals on Mortain, and so I'm really excited to see how they go about playing on a new map, playing something different. I think it's going to be fantastic, especially since Team 17 is giving special early access just for APL for the finals for everyone to play on Mortain. So really excited for that.
we're gonna lock out a PTE server just with the the 100 players or whatever.
Yeah,
They're
the
gonna have to
console
console
style.
it. They're gonna have to console it, dude. Oh my gosh, that's gonna be funny. Yeah, I know, because everyone's calling for Mortain to be the final. I think when we did it in the Discord, we got 25 people who reacted with a positive sign for Mortain, and then one negative, which I think was Chris JT. So
That man is a meta mama.
yes, he is. Yes, he is. So, but that's all I got. That's all I got.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else, Excel?
No, I think that's it for me.
Yeah, yeah. I think we'll wrap it up. I mean, overall, we started a bit earlier, so hopefully it didn't throw anybody off too much. But we always enjoy doing this. Excel. It's always a fucking blast having you on. I think you guys give some great takes. I do appreciate Mo too for giving his takes in the chat. I see you, dog. You're killing it in casting. But yeah, I mean, huge shout out to all the teams that came by. Soprano with Vanguard. I think there was a few Merc guys in the chat. I'm sure ESPT, of course, KO, Adam, both in the chat. Huge shout out to all these teams. I think good luck on all your matches coming up this week. ESPT gonna struggle with that bye weekend this week. I think they'll come out with the W, but we'll see. And overall, yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for this week. So that's kind of it for me.
Yep, that's it for me, man.
Yeah. All right, boys. Enjoy the rest of your night. Get some sleep. I know you South Americans are probably up way past your bedtimes.
Way past. Way past.
But enjoy yourself and enjoy week 4. So yeah, peace, guys.